Hello everyone, welcome back. Today I'm going to chat through Palace of the Drowned by Christine Mangan. I've been dreading doing this review. I know how hard it is to write a book, and so I don't like to go in all, oh God, I'm going to completely criticise this book because, oh my God, like it's so bad. This book isn't good. But I want to be constructive because it is bloody hard to write a book. Anyway, did I like Palace of the Drowned? Oh, I wanted to like this book so much more than I actually did. Okay, this is the second book that I've read by Christine Mangan, and much like her first, Tangerine, I was sucked in by an absolutely glorious book cover. This is a gorgeous book cover, so credit to her publishers for just great book cover. It just suckered me in. This book is set in 1966 Venice, and so of course that feels intoxicating to me. I'm like, oh my goodness, I want to be there. But it never meets its promise. It completely fails to deliver, unfortunately. So Christine Mangan, though this is only the second book I've read of hers, she likes to write books with female leads that tends to sort of bleed into the thriller element, thriller genre, but with a hint of, ooh, is the woman mad or is this really happening? And this is the second book that goes for exactly that. The main character is a middle-aged woman called Frances Gray, actually known as Frankie. Frankie is a writer in London, but she is struggling. She's published another book, but the critics don't like it and keep going on about her amazing debut and how, you know, oh, what happened to that great promise, great talent. Frankie is pissed off at these bad reviews, and at a book launch, she slaps another member of and a guest at the party. So anyway, her friends and her publisher, her agent, decide to bundle her off to Venice until the furore dies down. Obviously not good to be slapping unknown guests at parties. So they package her up to Venice because her best friend just happens to have an aging palazzo in Venice. And as we all do, have friends with such wonderful assets. So Frankie is packed off to Venice, where she goes and stays in this empty, aging palazzo in order for the furore to die down back in London. Of course, things are not quite what they seem. The palazzo, which she thought was empty, feels like she keeps hearing that there are other people there. Is it haunted? Are there squatters? She also meets someone called Gilly and strikes up an extremely unlikely friendship with Gilly, who is a much younger, seemingly super fan that Frankie bumps into in one of the markets in Venice. And this is where we start having my first issue, because Christine then uses this friendship between Gilly and Frankie to unravel Frankie more. Gilly is young, vivacious. She also turns out to be a promising young writer, and this sparks more jealousy within Frankie, who starts to feel uncomfortable around this new friend that she's just acquired, and instead starts to feel quite bitter and jealous about her. This is all set in the wonderful backdrop of Venice, but specifically the 1966 storm, which saw Venice flooded to a level that it hasn't been for years, decades, centuries. So a huge storm in 1966 Venice. And then this sort of storm becomes the sort of kick-off, the backdrop for Frankie finally cracking up and everything all coming down, her world all coming down, and the pressures of London getting to her, the agent, and her bitterness with Gilly, and it all becomes too much and an explosion. It doesn't. There are two main challenges with this. Firstly, the friendship with Gilly. Frankie is one of the better characters I've seen from Christine Mangan. She is a middle-aged woman. She's spiky, she's complex, she's depressed, she's a little bit bitter. That is a great character. Someone who's unhappy with where her life turned out, even though she followed her dream. That is a really interesting character. I like that. I like Frankie. But her friendship with Gilly is what can be called jumping the shark. And what that means is when a writer forces something in order to just get to the next point. Christine really needs Frankie to form an alliance, an allegiance, a relationship with someone in Venice in order for her plot to work. So Gilly becomes the vehicle. The problem is there is no way in reality Frankie would ever befriend Gilly. She is someone who has fled to Venice. She doesn't like people. She doesn't like friends. She wants to be by herself. Her character would not welcome anyone into her life, let alone someone who is 20 years younger than her and does things that she doesn't like go and hang out at bars or fancy restaurants or want to be seen. It's such an unlikely friendship, and Christine is unable to ever make that friendship really bite as believable. And that always makes it difficult as a reader because you're just not buying it. The second, and for me the most disappointing aspect of this book, is Venice. I love Venice, but Venice has a huge, rich history in terms of its cultural impact, whether it's profound impact in something like Don't Look Now, whether the book or the film, or in other literary works such as Death in Venice. Venice is a city that is a character in itself. It is completely unique. It also, for the purpose of the book, should have a suffocating element. As anyone who's ever been to Venice will tell you, you can get lost in Venice in an instant. It is so easy to turn one or two corners and suddenly have no idea where you are. All the streets are cobbled. The walls and the palazzos and the buildings are extremely close together. There's only a couple of big squares where it suddenly opens up. Every other building is a cathedral or a church or a chapel. There is so much that Venice can bring to any literary piece of work as a character, and that is essential. And you need Venice to have that claustrophobia for it to be a character in this book in order to add that richness. And Christine doesn't pull it off. I think there are two references to heels clattering on cobbles, which, as everyone who's been to Venice knows, it is completely cobbled. And that seems to be it. Like even the canals don't seem to be part of this until the flooding. Venice just doesn't come alive in this book. And you really need it to come alive. Had either one of those two issues with those books worked, I'd be more sympathetic. If Venice was such a great character in this book, I'd let go on the Gilly thing, and I would want to go on this adventure that Christine wants to take us with Frankie. Alternatively, had their friendship been really one that brought out something in each other that was unexpected and genuine, then I'd just say, okay, it's a shame about Venice, but at least I've got a friendship that's really curious and they sort of pick apart at each other. That doesn't happen either. So Palace of the Drowned ends up being just a disappointment. I preferred it, however, to Tangerine, Christine's first book, which was set in Tangier. And that's because I found Frankie a far more interesting character than the ingenue that we had in Tangerine. I want Christine to succeed as a writer, which is why I decided to review this, because I love the way her intention is to pick cities or places in the world and make them characters. You see that with so many places, and I really like that. I like that as a writing. I love feeling the context, the place, smelling the place, feeling it, the atmosphere, the temperatures, the chaos, the quiet. I love that as a backdrop that feels that it's alive and three-dimensional and part of the plot. But we're just nowhere near that. So this is, I suppose, an unsympathetic review of a book. But I say this because I want it to be better. I really am rooting for Christine. I don't know where she's going to set her next book. I mean, is it New York? Paris? Gosh, it could be anywhere, couldn't it? I mean, Berlin? These would be really exciting. Seville? I mean, I would be so excited by any of these. Shanghai? Wow. Hong Kong. Please give Christine support in getting time to build the location as a character, because she is a writer with ideas that I think could be promising. But until then, that's my thoughts on Palace of the Drowned by Christine Mangan. Sorry.